I left quietly after discovering my husband's affair. A year later, he found me, seeking forgiveness and a second chance. After hearing of my husband's adultery, I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but perhaps it will be helpful to someone. Now that the incident is over and I've moved on, after 3.5 years of marriage, I learned of my husband's affair in February 2018. I worked a contract job that occasionally required a lot of travel but also permitted me to work from home. When I returned as a director of a technical sales company, my husband held a very lucrative position. Although things had become a little strained due to him working longer and longer hours and me traveling for work, we still had what I would call a fairly excellent marriage. 5 years ago, at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance, I met my husband, who is now my ex. We immediately clicked after we started talking. To be honest, I felt that being with a man who was so attractive and articulate was a huge advantage. My rough around the edges demeanor somehow appealed to him. After a few weeks of dating, we found ourselves smitten with one another. When we would meet at each other's apartments, the clothes simply flew off. After 18 months of dating, we eventually got married and moved into a large apartment while saving for a down payment on a home. Things began to change after the first 3 years of marriage. Even though I still had feelings for him, I noticed that he would argue over little matters. When I mentioned all the late hours and the increasingly regular work outings, he would grow irate. Since he had been moving up the corporate ladder, he would claim that it was a necessary component of paying his dues. At least, that was his justification. He informed me that since I was also away for weeks at a time, I had no right to challenge him. In reality, I had only been taking vacations for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so I assured him that I could definitely manage cutting back on my travel time. There was never a conclusion to these highly circular arguments. Looking back, I realized that I was unaware that my husband was having an affair. Aside from our declining sexual life and his persistently late workout hours, I would never have suspected anything. I simply assumed that he was exhausted from his job, but being rejected so often when I tried to start a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Although he had a work mobile phone and might have been using it, I didn't witness the covert texting that I had read about in other articles. He used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time there. Around September 2017, James began returning home from work and spending the evening at a work engagement instead. This increased from 1 night per week to over 3 nights each week. Although I'm not naturally envious, he would undoubtedly be observed by others, and I'm aware that he would need to repel some of the females at his workplace. Despite working with more female CEOs than male ones, he gave off the impression that he was primarily engaged in his job. The first time I suspected he was cheating was a month prior to D-Day. Before returning home, he had made a brief stop at the supermarket. I was asked to assist him with the grocery shopping. Something blue was glinting from just beneath the front passenger seat of his automobile, as I was retrieving a few items from the rear seat. It was boxers that belonged to my husband. He preferred ones from a certain clothing store, so I knew it was his. Looking back, I can see the boxers were a warning sign. He always removes his boxers first from under his clothes when he's feeling very lustful. I'm not sure why, but when I watched this, I felt sick to my stomach right away. I couldn't understand why his boxers were beneath the seat. I didn't say anything more. My heart must have been pounding so hard that I nearly passed out because when I brought the bags back to the kitchen, James asked me how I was feeling and said that I appeared to have seen a ghost. I simply ignored his remark. It took everything I had to conceal my emotions, but I did my best not to appear upset or deceived. I made the decision to try to find out whether or not he was seeing someone that night. On the following day, I began to consider all the hints I could have overlooked. Other than the boxers, I had no evidence. He works in an office building downtown, and we live in a reasonably big city. I made the decision to temporarily put the affair idea out of my mind and considered giving him more of my attention. I prepared a delicious meal and arranged the dining table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles one Friday after work. I purchased an arrangement of flowers and a lovely bottle of wine. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had made when he arrived, as usual, breezing in after work. He apologized and said he was sorry, but he had to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with his coworkers. He mentioned that he needed to take a shower first, but that he could have a small snack with me before he left. I guess I went utterly silent because my insides flipped on me. I won't explain the type of anger I was experiencing at the time, but I had had enough. I took my work cell phone and threw it in his back seat while he was taking a shower. I've been considering this as a means of using my own phone to find him. I walked into the kitchen after that and threw the food and flowers in the garbage. After taking a shower, he got ready and looked handsome as always. "All right, let's eat," he said. "Never mind. Go out with your friends," I urged. He asked me if I was angry after giving me a weird look. "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me," I said. He got upset and sarcastically remarked on my short fuse while telling me to stop acting like a kid. "Foolish me," I muttered as I stood there, allowing everything to settle in. For once, I felt we should spend the evening together. He simply gave me a sly smile and stormed off. I pulled out my second phone and began following my work phone when he departed. About 20 minutes away, at the bar he often visits with his coworkers, I caught him stopping. I made the decision to go find his automobile. Indeed, it was in the parking lot of the bar. I waited to see if I could see him in my car across the street. I felt completely different, like a stalker, but I told myself that I had to calm my fear of his whereabouts. I observed him leaving the bar with a woman about an hour after I got there. She had the appearance of an executive from his company. She took hold of him, drew him near, and planted a kiss on his lips. My body was totally numb and my stomach started to clench up. They went to a different vehicle and climbed in together. When their automobile pulled out, I tried to keep up with them. You guessed it, they drove to a hotel 10 minutes away. As I stopped on the street beside the hotel, I saw them exit, holding hands, and enter. I'd seen enough. I felt foolish. I began pounding the steering wheel with my fist. That was it. Something went totally blank inside of me. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I got better, I felt like I wanted a drink. At this point, my life started on a path I never would have imagined. I simply began to drive out of town, replaying all that I had just seen. I was crying out of anger as much as I hate to admit it. I located a pleasant little tavern on the outskirts of town, some 30 miles away, and stopped in. I ordered a drink while seated at the bar. The bartender, a man, said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, so I guess I looked like death warmed over. "You could say that," I answered, half smiling. A woman sat down beside me and struck up a discussion. Even though I didn't feel like talking, there was something about this woman that put me at ease. We struck up a conversation, and eventually, my husband's infidelity came up. I told her that all I wanted to do was get away from him and forget about him. "You're not alone, buddy," she replied, giving me a back pat after giving me a quick glance. "I experienced that a few years ago. I think there's a reason why these things occur. Your life can now take a positive or negative turn, I assure you. At this point, everything is totally up to you." Her remarks, for some reason, jolted me out of my gloom. Even though I was aware of my pain, I've always been able to see things rationally. And she was absolutely correct. We identified ourselves. Sarah was her name. I really liked her salt of the earth vibe, even though she was more of a country gal. "Are you going to move out?" she inquired. I suppose I never thought to look that far ahead. I had a fight or flight response going on. "I knew I didn't want to be around this man any longer," I said. "I have an idea. I feel very sympathetic to your situation," Sarah added. "When the time comes, I have a mobile trailer on my land in case you feel the need to go. It might require some work and isn't very good. Why don't you visit and see if you could imagine yourself briefly residing in anything like that? I'll give you a terrific bargain on it. At least you could even park it on a lovely piece of property I own." I would appreciate it if you could watch it for me. It could be beneficial to escape your predicament. Just a thought. I took a moment to comprehend her concept. Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-wife years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in her trailer or anything just to get my head on straight, added the bartender, who had been listening in on the chat. Perhaps this was just what I needed, but I felt as though I had wandered into the twilight zone. Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out, I said to Sarah. After a while, we split up and agreed to get together at her house in a few days. I began to feel as though I had some perspective and an opportunity to escape what I thought was a terrible heartache combined with a nightmare. I knew one thing for sure: I would never, ever want to spend time with my husband again. I find cheating to be so disgusting, and it has always been the one thing I thought I would never put up with. I sat on the couch when I arrived home that evening. After James asked me where I had been when he came out. "Where have you been?" I questioned, turning to face him. "You know, I went to grab drinks," he said. I directly inquired, "Are you having an affair?" He appeared surprised, but he soon collected himself and responded, "No, why would you ask me that?" I informed him that I had heard he might be seeing someone at work. "Who told you that?" he said. "Someone I know," I said, but I kept the name secret. After saying, "You're being ridiculous," he accused me of being intoxicated and insane and inquired about my whereabouts. "We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends," I remarked. Despite his obvious desire to ask more questions, he returned to our bedroom and went to bed. Now that I had proof that he had been deceiving me for months, I made the decision to sleep on the sofa. I couldn't sleep at all because I kept seeing him in bed with this woman. I felt sorry for myself, disgusted and hurt. But then I thought about Sarah's trailer. The thought of it cheered me up, and it was almost like a revelation. Something must be wrong with me since the fight or flight response automatically activated amid the pain I was experiencing, and I preferred the flight response. We didn't talk much the following morning and carried on with the weekend as if nothing had occurred. I scheduled a meeting with Sarah a few days later. I noticed that Sarah had a lovely ranch when I got there, and the trailer was actually quite nice, about 26 feet long and fully furnished. It brought back memories of a fun spring break trip I took with pals while I was in college. Sarah accepted the money I offered her for the trailer. To be honest, I almost took it from her. I drove over to see her ranch property after she gave me directions. There were hiking and biking paths close by, and the area was lovely, with lots of trees and scrub vegetation. Sarah had a little cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water access for the trailer, and it was close to the foothills of some mountains. Sarah promised to set up the trailer for me and pull it to the location. I tried to get James to come clean over the course of the following few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even bluntly warned him that there would be no turning back if I discovered he was cheating. As a result, he became even more engrossed in his affair fog and began to lash out at me with denials. I nearly laughed at how awful the denial was. I scolded myself for not capturing pictures of the two of them, and I had no tangible evidence that he had cheated. I decided that I wanted to leave this marriage after going through this emotional anguish. Instead of communicating my feelings to James, I simply began planning. While he was at work, one started quietly removing my possessions from the apartment and transferring them to the trailer. At least I felt like I was doing something about it. I saw a difference in James during this period. Although he had been behaving more politely toward me, I believed it was too little, too late. I felt I needed a break too, so he kept going on company outings after work. One night, I got ready too, just as he was leaving. After glancing at me, he inquired about my destination. All I said was, meeting up with some friends. "You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk, and you don't know them," I interrupted him as he began to ask more questions. He used to say precisely this to me whenever I asked if I might accompany him on office excursions. "All right, have a good time," he added with a somewhat offended expression. "I definitely will," I replied. I began making new acquaintances while working on the trailer and hanging out with Sarah at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Sarah's wonderful family and friends. I also made the decision to cut back on my drinking because I didn't want to form any unhealthy habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so simple. At this point, James informed me that the next week he would be traveling for work. He stated that the executive team and a few department heads were going. When I inquired who was going, "I hope you have a great time with your girlfriend," I added, glancing at him. I immediately regretted saying that because it sparked a furious argument. Although, as Sarah had informed me, it didn't really matter. "I now regret not knowing more about his affair partner," I said. "It doesn't matter who the other woman is," Sarah replied. "The fact that he chose to leave you is all that matters. He destroyed the marriage, whether he admits it or not, sister. Facts are facts. Sarah ought to write a book for the betrayed, damn it." I had the ideal opportunity to move out entirely during James's work vacation. When he was gone, I collected everything valuable that was mine, including clothes, laptops, and equipment. I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. I left a note before I left. It was a lengthy explanation at first, but I chose to make it brief. I wrote, "I hope it was worth it," on a piece of paper on top of a note on the kitchen table. I set my wedding ring there. I felt like a great weight had been lifted as I left. I was liberated. The hurt would take time to heal, and there would be baggage to cope with, but I had started. I needed time to myself and to swiftly and quietly get rid of him. The fact that I hadn't challenged him or coerced a confession didn't make me proud. I hadn't screamed or shouted. He didn't deserve it, in my opinion. He disregarded everything we owned, including our plans for the future, our aspirations for a home and a family, and now it was all gone. There was no turning back. I owed him absolutely nothing. He could handle the consequences. I hadn't planned anything or called a lawyer. I just wanted a new beginning and some clarity. The air from the mountains was just what I needed. When I got inside my trailer, I resumed running the next week, and it was wonderful to be alive. James texted things like, "We just landed, we're having a team dinner," and so on while he was away. "Where are you?" was the question in a few messages. "Why haven't you gotten back to me?" I didn't answer. My phone exploded with calls and texts when he got home. He kept trying to get in touch with me, but I ignored him. His mother also tried to phone me after the first day, but I didn't pick up. He didn't try to engage my father because we aren't close, and he is the only member of my family that I still have. His messages grew more urgent after he was ignored for a week. "What is this?" was one of the texts he sent. "We must speak. I'm not sure what you believe you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair going on." He finally texted me after a week of not answering, saying, "I'm sorry. Things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was involved with someone at work. You were absent a lot while I was preoccupied with my work. I simply made an error. I intended to terminate it." An error? I've been waiting for this confession all along, yet somehow it only made me detest him more. Why was he unable to be truthful? I didn't have any dreams about a future with this man. Errors don't persist for 6, 8, or a year. His pleas for me to return and work on the marriage eventually grew pitiful. I refused to respond to him even after he stopped bothering me for a few weeks. I didn't want him to learn where I lived or to snoop around in my life. I didn't want my haven to be destroyed by this man. He then began sending nasty texts like, "You're a coward. One day you refused to speak to me. You have no regard for us. Come home, please, so we can discuss. You're aware I'm able to visit you, Emma. Please, let's chat and make things right, damn it." Although I don't recall all of the texts, they all appear to be excuses with minimal genuine regret. In one ear, I let them go, and out the other. After a while, I switched my mobile number. Update, June 2018. I received an email from James informing me that he had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. I just said, "Okay, that sounds good." This led to a barrage of emails requesting that I visit him and other things. He wrote that he would stop bothering me if I consented to an uncontested divorce. After realizing this wouldn't work after I consented, I was genuinely free a few months later after I moved out of our apartment. I never had to see him again. He seemed to care more about that than I did, even though neither of us had any closure. I would occasionally think of him for a few months, and yes, the grief would suddenly come to me, like when I heard a song we used to enjoy. After a while, though, I simply stopped thinking about him. Update 2. Now that I'm officially divorced, things are going great. In actuality, I got to know a wonderful guy just down the hill from my house. I was running on the trail. We clicked when I helped him replace a flat tire. Despite being a few years younger than me, he is fantastic and quite adorable. He refers to me as his mountain woman and adores my way of life. Although I'm not in a rush to commit, I also don't intend to give up on men entirely. I have no intention of moving out of the trailer anytime soon. I enjoy being outside and have simplified my life. It made everything easier for me, including the grief and my ex-husband. I'm aware that everyone responds to these situations in a unique way. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent. I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Continue living your life as you improve yourself. It will get better. I hope everyone has the finest possible life. I've revised this roughly 5 times to make it readable, and I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-husband's condition. I was worried that my ex-husband was attempting to find me, as I indicated in my earlier post. I left our previous residence, which was around 2 hours away. I ran into him last weekend at a coffee shop I often visit in the town close to my home. It didn't seem like a coincidence to me. Fortunately, I managed to get away before he noticed me. 3rd update. I went into town this past weekend to get groceries and made a stop at my normal coffee establishment. I was utilizing their free internet to work on some paperwork for work. I finished and walked out of the coffee shop. I was on my way to my pickup when I heard someone shout, "Emma!" When I turned to look across the street, I saw James. I was being waved at by my ex-husband. Finally, Armageddon had arrived. He hurried across the street toward me. I stood there in disbelief, as though anticipating an embrace. He walked over and extended his hand. I stopped him in his tracks by instinctively holding out my arms with my palms up. He appeared to be in severe pain. Then he added, "I've been searching for you, Emma. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we have a conversation?" Guys, I felt like an animal confined in a cage. Yes, I did. All right, let's find a table or something. And we can talk for a minute. I finally gave in. When he asked if we could come to my house, I firmly refused. At the end of the street, he trailed me down to a bench outside a small store. He began by remarking on how much I had changed and how much he liked my new appearance, beard, and level of fitness. He raved about how much my body had changed, wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and his hair in a ponytail, just like I used to enjoy. He was really putting on the charm. I had my radar set high. He was clearly attempting to activate the sex appeal. I needed to control myself so I could see where this was headed. He began by saying he was sorry about the affair. He claimed that after I left, karma had severely impacted him. When his employer learned of the affair, the situation became so tense that he eventually resigned. His affair partner, who at the time was engaged, received criticism and was transferred to a different department within the organization. He replied by telling her fiancé the truth after she blamed him for everything, which caused them to split up. This is when he bowed his head and began to weep. I didn't say anything. I just sat there and looked around. He stood up straight and looked at me for a while. "What do you want from me?" I asked. He assured me that he had no intention of having an affair. He stated that the company's politics and positioning drew him in, and that his affair partner used her charm and influence to corrupt him. He acknowledged that he felt he was taking advantage of her as much as she was taking advantage of him. After I accused him of cheating, he stated that he intended to come clean. He drank after work to ease the guilt he felt at the moment, because he loathed himself. He claimed that he felt so stupid, so alone, and as if his heart had burst with loss immediately after I departed. He ended his relationship with his affair partner right away. He believed he had to find me to see if there was any chance of reconciliation, because I refused to speak with him or get in touch with him. He desired a fresh start. He hoped we could start afresh, even though he knew we were divorced. I simply gazed at him. I then gave it to him. You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union? As I previously stated, we were done if you cheated. Forgiveness does not exist. This relationship will not be restarted. You murdered it as soon as you left me. You ruined everything we had. How foolish do you believe me to be? One evening, I watched you enter a hotel with her. Were you aware of that? I became aware that people were beginning to notice that my voice had been getting louder. He grabbed my arm and started crying. After letting him sob on my shoulder for a while, I pushed him away. I deserve all this, he replied, glancing up at me. I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? I'd rather not go. I would like to speak further. I want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have in the past, Emma, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. Before you left me, I had no idea how much I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I'm unable to forgive myself, and I don't want to do so till the day I pass away. He began to sob uncontrollably and hyperventilate. I lifted him up and gave him a hug. It seemed like my only option for soothing him. I knew then that I had shattered his heart as severely as he had shattered mine. Walking, we found a peaceful spot to carry on our conversation. I said, "How did you find me?" When he had calmed down, "Have you engaged a private investigator?" After giving it some thought, he responded, "No," with a small giggle. He clarified that he asked how things were going when he ran into Stephen a few weeks prior. Stephen didn't mention that he had noticed me. James forced him to reveal all the information. I had warned Stephen not to tell him, so he was reluctant. But James persisted. Stephen finally gave in, but all he knew was that I lived somewhere close by and was in town on his days off. He began to come here to check on me. I kind of laughed when he said that, thinking, damn, Stephen can't keep his trap shut. He blushed. We ultimately decided to have dinner at a charming little spot with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything since I wasn't going to give him a reason to be kind to me or say he wasn't so inebriated that he couldn't drive back. In fact, we had a good conversation. I then escorted him to his vehicle. He insisted that he hadn't dated anyone else since I left and vowed fervently that I was the only person he wanted, so he pushed me hard to stay longer. No, it's still way too early for me to go down that road, I informed him. He pleaded with me to come back, but I didn't say yes. After giving him my new email address, I didn't say anything more. My response to his request for my phone number was, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." He wept over it, but in the end, he agreed with my choice. He promised to send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend. Before he left, I asked him directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one cheating?" Before he got into his car, yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement, he responded after pausing to reflect. All right, maybe I could do that in 5 or 10 years, I answered. I would wait if that's what it would take, he replied. He then took both of my hands in his, looked me in the eye, and said, "God damn it, Emma, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This statement truly caught me off guard. His remarks continued to upset me even after he left. He had spoken those words so firmly. However, I was still unable to envision us reuniting, even though I felt better about the incident. I was unable to perceive him as a friend at this time, perhaps a friend, but even that was a mystery. I returned home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and thought about how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that he wouldn't destroy the tranquility I had created for myself? I had no idea I had the luxury of time to sort through it and get perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last update, most likely, this will be my final update. When I first uploaded my story to Reddit, the moderators kept taking it down. In summary, I ghosted my ex-husband for more than a year before he discovered me. He wanted to make amends and start over with us. You will be deeply disappointed if you thought I would be the typical beta, blue pill fool, and forgive him. He expressed his love and regret for the affair in a lengthy email he sent me last week. He offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. My answer? I silenced him. I informed him that I had no plans to make amends with him. I'm totally happy living alone, taking advantage of my secluded position, and keeping things simple. At 32, I'm not in a rush to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan and have enjoyed the company of a few men and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I have no intention of reconciling and declined to provide him with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I hope the best for you, and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. He was annoyed by my evasiveness and responded in a telling way. He acknowledged that he had taken a job offer from a different state. His true goal had been for me to accompany him, believing that my remote work would make the move simple. He wished we could start over somewhere new. He wanted to visit me in person to attempt to persuade me because he was running out of time before moving. Luckily for me, his time was up because I had a week of business travel scheduled. I'm grateful I will no longer have him in my life. He will soon recognize that his time with me is over, but I anticipate receiving a few more emails. He'll need to find someone else, and he might even cheat on them. To anyone reading this, make the most of your life, let go of the past, and give yourself the strength to go on. To all of you, good luck. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.